My dad was born right over here. My dad was born here. My mother wasn't. My mother was born about 15 miles south of here. But my dad was born here on East Caney. And he grew up here. All of this used to be from this road almost back to the highway was once owned by my great-granddaddy, Nathan Pannell. He had the first steam gin in this part of the country. He owned 2 sections of land. He owned from that creek to the highway you came in, almost back to the highway up there. He was owned by Nathan Pannell.
Do you know how he acquired
He
that?
came in here from Tennessee. He and a white guy by the name of Bird Lawler. Bird Lawler bought over in Chapel, east of the creek. My great-granddaddy Nathan bought on this side of the creek, 50 cents an acre. It was, I don't know, they don't know how these two parties, but how they got, but they got their money during the Civil War. So I was told that. Now what they done to get it, I don't know. But my grandmother's daddy, his name was Nathan Pannell. He came here and bought with a white guy. His name was Bird Lawler. Bird Lawler bought on the east side of the creek and he bought on this side of the creek.
So he was sort of the founder of East Caney in a way.
Yeah, he was one of those, among, like, I don't, as far as I know, he was among the first settlers.
Back to East Caney, when you were a youngster, there was, was there a cotton gin in this area when you were growing up?
It was a cotton gin at Weaver as the closest gin. You either had to take your cotton gin to Weaver or Sulphur Spring. My granddaddy, the market where he had the gin is still right behind that house out here, but it wasn't operating. It had folded up.
Now, when you went to Wheeler with your cotton, was there any segregation involved?
No.
When you came, you just got in line.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the church here, the Baptist church. Did you go to this church did your family go to this church when you were a youngster?
Yeah. Well, this was the only church in that community. This was you either went to church here or you had to go out of the community to go to it. So people ask me why I'm a Baptist. I say, well, I joined the church when I was raised up where it was nothing but a Baptist church. I don't know whether I'm Baptist or what I am. I'm not interested in being a Baptist. I just want to be a child of God. Get what church membership. I don't think Baptists got nothing to do with it.
That was it. You had a choice of a Baptist church or a Baptist church.
What do you say?
You had a choice of a Baptist church or a Baptist church.
Yeah, a Baptist church or no church. Yeah.
Now, what was the church building like when you were growing up?
You want me to show you? I can show you.
Can you
a picture of it out there and what's it called?
Well, yeah. Can you just describe it, and then later we'll go out and look at it.
Well, it was a big, pretty good sized building. Had 2 entrances instead of just one. Used to be about where this porch used to be a big hackberry tree right there. And that's what, back then, if you didn't go into church, but everybody came to church, frankly, on Sunday. That church was a meeting place. Whether you were And lots of the men, that, especially, they never would come in church. They just sit under that tree and talk. Naturally, didn't have no facility, you know, outdoor, all that kind of stuff. You didn't have no. We had a little Delco motor engine to light the church. But that's about as modern a thing as we had. We did have a Delco in for electricity for the church.
What kind of music? Did you have a piano?
Piano, just a piano.
And now what would a Sunday be like? You'd come to church in the morning?
You'd come to church in Sunday school, then you'd have 11 o'clock service, you'd go home, be back out here about 5 o'clock for what they call BTU, which is the Baptist Training Church, and then have a night, always had night service. That, for a long time, it just had on first and third Sunday. But they finally went what they call full-time having service. Till they having preaching every other Sunday, they started having it every Sunday like we have now. But for back I do remember at one time they just had twice a month.
And then what would you do on the Sundays where there was no service?
Well, we always had Sunday school every Sunday. And especially during the summer, the youngsters would have a program Sunday evening. We're glad to get away from the house, you know, so get away so the youngsters would plan something for the Sundays. During the winter, we might not have nothing, but during the summer, we'd have something Sunday evening just to get away from the house and get together and play.
Wednesday night services? Was there anything during the weekdays?
Yeah. They'd have a midweek service. Mostly the kids didn't hardly attend midweek service, just mostly the adults attended midweek service. They didn't have any activities for youngsters back then.
What about the pastors, the preachers?
The first pastor I really remember, I don't know where he was from, but he wasn't from around, he wasn't local. And I guess he stayed here 3 or 4 years. Then we had got a pastor by the name of Johnson who lived south of Como, about 12 miles south of here. And he was here for I think he was the pastor when I left here. I think Johnson was still the pastor when I left here. And another guy came in by the name of Rogers, and I understand he was here about 20 years.
What about revivals? Can you tell me anything about revivals?
No violence out here.
Revivals.
Had a revival every year. Always have a week's revival. He'd invite not a local pastor, but some out-of-town pastor. You'd have everybody look forward to the revival. There was going to be a 5-night affair.
What about say special events like, say, marriages here at the church?